story. Hello. Okay, I'm going to read our second part of Fortunately the Milk, and it'll be posted later on Google Classroom. I've got a special post for all our videos so people can go back and read them later, or listen to them later. Listening to reading is reading. It's a kind of reading. Anyway. All right. So we met Dr. Steg, his name was, who was an inventor, and he and the dad were arguing about if they're in the past or the future, those pirates. Okay. So Dad's talking first. All the dinosaurs have gone off into the stars, leaving the world to mammals. I wondered where you all went, I said. Oh no, it was Dr. Steg talking first, sorry. The stars, he told me. That is where we will have gone. So, I said, can you take me home? Well, he said, yes and no. What does that mean? Yes, I would love to take you home. Nothing would make me happier. No, I cannot take you home. In all honesty, I do not believe that I can take me home. My time machine is being temperamental. I need that special shiny greeny stone. I have pressed that button many times, but nothing happens. Button? Don't you mean big red flat pressy thing? I asked. I most certainly do not. It is a button, and I named it after my aunt Button. Can I press it? If you wish. I pressed the button. The sun shot around the sky, and the sky started to flicker in nights and in days, and the balloon began to rock and lurch and zoom around like an angry fly. I held onto the ropes as hard as I could. Fortunately, I was still keeping tight hold of the milk in my right hand. When we stopped being blown all across the sky, it was night, and, according to Professor Steg, we had only gone back about 1,000 years. The moon was nearly full. I am even further from my children and our breakfast, I said. You have your milk, he said. Jameson. Shh. Where there is milk, there is hope. Ah, over there. That looks like a perfect landing platform for time-traveling scientists in floaty ball person carriers. Hey, Jameson, do you want to give her her popsicle thing? We landed on the platform and got out. The platform stuck out of the jungle and had flaming torches on each side. There were people standing on it with very black hair and sharp stone knives. Is this a balloon landing platform? I asked the people. It is not, said a fat man. It is our temple. We had a very bad harvest last year, and we had just asked the gods to send us a sacrifice to make sure that this year's harvest is better when you floated down in that thing with your monster. Here's where they landed. The platform. Sacrifice. Uh-oh. Thank you, by the way, said a little thin man. I was going to be the sacrifice if no one else turned up. Much obliged. So now we will sacrifice you and your monster. But my children are waiting for their breakfast, I said. Look. I held up the milk. Thanks. Why did they all just fall to their knees? Asked Professor Steg. Is this usual hairless mammal behavior? Perhaps I should hold up some hard, hairy, wet white crunchers and see what happens. Coconuts, I told him. They are called coconuts. What is that you're holding? The fat man asked. Milk, I said. Milk, they exclaimed, and they prostrated themselves on the ground. That means they laid on the ground with their arms outstretched. We have a prophecy, said the fat man, that when a man and a spiny-backed monster descend from the skies on a round floaty thing, floaty ball person carrier, said the little thin man. Yes, one of those. We were told that when this happened, if the man held up milk, then we were not to sacrifice them, but we were meant to take them to the volcano and give them as a present the green jewel that is the eye of Splod. Splod? He is the god of people with short, funny names. It is, I said, a remarkably specific sort of prophecy. When did you receive it? Last Wednesday, said the fat man proudly. The priest of Splod was woken in the night by a voice whispering from the heavens. A couple of pictures. Milk and a coconut. And when he went to look and see who it was, there was nobody there. Also, he was sleeping on top of the temple, and nobody else could have been up there with him. So it must have either been Splod himself talking or one of his angelic messengers. we walked together down a jungle path. Professor Steg carried the rope in his mouth that led up to the balloon, and he dragged the balloon along. After half an hour, we reached the volcano. It was not a very big volcano. There were wisps of smoke coming from the top of it. On the side of the volcano, there was a carving of a big, scary face with one eye in the middle of its forehead. The eye was the biggest emerald I had ever seen. "A special shiny greeny stone," said Professor Steg, with his mouth full of rope. The fat man clambered up the side of the volcano. There they are. "It is a good thing that Splod himself told us to give you the eye of Splod," said the little thin man who had narrowly avoided being sacrificed. "Because there is another prophecy that if the eye of Splod is ever removed, great Splod will awaken and spread burning destruction across the land." "Here you go," said the fat man. He handed us the emerald. Professor Steg nipped up the rope ladder into the balloon's gondola and began to install the emerald in the time machine. Hang on. He was a stegosaurus? Yes. There's that mountain. And how could he just nip up a rope ladder? "He was," said my father, "a large stegosaurus, but very light on his feet. There are fat people who are excellent dancers." "Are there any ponies in this?" asked my sister. "I thought there would be ponies by now." There's a pony. I was standing on the ground, holding onto the rope ladder, when the ground shook and the very small volcano began to belch smoke and lava. "Splod is angry," shouted the little thin man. "He wants his eye back." There was a rushing wind, and the balloon jerked me up into the air high above splurting lava. Unfortunately, I dropped the milk. I wasn't holding on to it tightly enough. It landed on the top of Splod's head. Professor Steg hauled the rope ladder up with his tail. "I've lost the milk," I told him. "That's not good," he admitted. "But I know where it is. It's on top of Splod's head on the side of the volcano." Professor Steg said, "Good Splod, what on earth is that?" Before our eyes, another balloon, just like ours, appeared over by the volcano. Where'd that other balloon come from, I wonder? A man hurried down the rope ladder. Sophie, stop. He placed a large emerald in Splod's eye, picked up the milk from Splod's head, ran up the ladder, and the balloon vanished. Then the very small volcano stopped erupting as suddenly as if it had been turned off. "That was a bit peculiar, wasn't it?" said the professor. "It was," I agreed. "Gloom and despair and despondency overcoming me. The man in the balloon stole my milk. We are lost in the past with jungles and pirates and volcanoes. Now I will never get home. My children will never have breakfast. We are doomed to float forever through the dusty air of the past in a hot air balloon." "It is not a balloon," said Professor Steg. "It is a floaty ball person carrier. What nonsense you do talk. Now, I think that should do the trick." He finished attaching the emerald to the box using string mostly, and also sticky tape, and he pushed the red button. "Where are we going?" I asked. It seemed like the sun was zooming across the sky as if nights were following days in a flickering strobe. "The far, far future," said Professor Steg. The machine stopped. We were hanging in the air above a grassy plain with a very small gray mountain beneath us. "There," said Professor Steg. "It is now an extinct volcano. But look!" There's the other guy putting back the emerald. Oh, it's Dad. On the side of the extinct volcano was carved the face of Splod, still recognizable, even though it was much eroded by time and the weather, and in the single eye was a huge green emerald, a perfect twin to the one that we had attached to the time machine. "Right," said Professor Steg. "Grab me that special shiny greeny stone." I went over to the side of the gondola and down the rope ladder. I pulled the emerald out of the eye socket. Below me on the plain, a number of brightly colored ponies were gathered. There's the ponies. And when I picked up the emerald, one of them shouted up at me, "You must be the man without the milk. We have heard about you in our tales." "Why are you a pink pony with a pale blue star on the side?" I asked. "I know," said the pony with a sigh. "It's what everybody's wearing these days. Pale blue stars are so last year." Professor Stegg leaned over to the side of the balloon's basket. "Hurry up," he called. "If the volcano is going to go off, it will do it any moment." The volcano made a noise like a huge burp, and the middle of it collapsed into itself. "He thought it would do that," said a green pony with a sparkly mane. "There was a prophecy, I suppose," I said. "No, we're just very clever." All the ponies nodded. They were very clever ponies. "I'm so glad there were ponies," said my sister. Here's a pony. I got back into the balloon basket. Professor Stegg unhooked the first emerald from his time machine and replaced it with the one I had just taken from the weathered face of Splod in the future. "Do not, whatever else you might do," said the professor, "touch those two stones together." "Why not?" "Because, according to my calculations, if the same object from two different times touches itself, one of two things will happen. Either the universe will cease to exist, or 3 remarkable dwarves will dance through the streets with flower pots on their head." "That sounds astonishingly specific," I said. "I know, but it is science, and it is much more probable that the universe will end." "I thought it would be," I said. "You look so sad," Professor Stegg told me. "I am. It's the milk. My children are breakfastless." "The milk," said Professor Stegg. "Of course." And with that, Professor Stegg pressed the red button with his heavily armored tail. There was a zoom, a twerp, and a thang, and we were hurtling through the cosmic void. And then it was dark, very dark. There's Professor Stegg. "Whoops," said Professor Stegg. "Overshot a little. Only by a week, though. Hold on." Professor Stegg leaned over the side of the basket. "Excuse me," he said. "Is there anyone around?" "Only me," said a very surprised-sounding voice from below us. "The priest of Splod. Who is that up in the sky? Is it a bird? You do not sound like a bird." "I'm not a bird," said Professor Stegg. "I am a marvelous yet mysterious and prophetic voice telling you a mighty prophecy. So mighty that, very mighty indeed. Listen. When a huge and good-looking, spiny-backed individual, monster," I told him. The prophecy said monster. "Accompanied by a scrawny human being of revolting appearance," said Professor Stegg. That was not necessary. "Lands in a floaty ball person carrier, you must not sacrifice them. You must instead take them to the volcano and give them the eye of Splod. And this shall be the way that you shall know them. The human being will hold up some milk." "Is that the prophecy?" said the voice. "Yes." "Is there anything about crops in it?" "I'm afraid not." "Oh well. Thank you anyway. Prophetic and mysterious voice from the air." I pressed the red button. Daylight. We were in the middle of a very familiar volcanic eruption. "Quickly," I said, "give me the emerald." A little way away I could see a balloon being blown through the sky, while fire and ash were swept around it by the wind. I could see me in the balloon, standing next to Professor Stegg with my mouth open. I looked miserable. Professor Stegg, my Professor Stegg, gave me the emerald. There's the volcanic eruption. There they are. I raced down the rope ladder and placed the emerald back into the face's eye. Then, as the volcano stopped erupting, I looked around for the milk. I knew it had landed on Splod's head when it fell. Fortunately, the milk had fallen into a small drift of volcanic ash and was unharmed. I picked it up, brushed it off, and started back up the balloon ladder. Professor Stegg pressed the button. The sky went dark. There's their floaty ball person carrier. All right. We were floating above a landscape of ominous towers and disquieting castles. It was not a friendly place. Bats flew against the sky in huge flocks, crowding out the waning moon. I don't like this place, I told the professor. I don't see why not, he said. It looks as if it would be very nice when the sun comes up. There was a loud flut, and where the bats had been fluttering, several pallid people were now standing. The man in front had a very bald head. They all had sharp teeth. We'll find out who those people are on Monday. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording here.